Hey, before we get into this, I want you to do something. I want you to think back to the last time you made a decision, and I mean any decision, where your very first thought wasn't, what will people think of this? Hard to remember, right? Maybe you've been holding back on starting that business because you're terrified people will laugh if it fails. Maybe you keep shrinking yourself in conversations because you're constantly running a background calculation in your head. Will this make them like me less? Maybe you've spent years chasing a version of yourself that was never really yours to begin with, built entirely out of other people's expectations stacked on top of each other like bricks in a wall that you keep hitting. And here's the exhausting part. You already know this. You know that caring this much is draining you. You know that staying up at night replaying conversations, rehearsing what you should have said, obsessing over how you came across, none of that is actually helping you. It's just noise. It's just weight. But here's the thing that nobody tells you. The thing that sounds almost too simple to be true, the moment you stop caring about what the wrong things think, everything you actually want starts falling into place. Now I know how that sounds. It sounds like a bumper sticker. It sounds like something someone says when they've never had real problems. But stick with me, because we're going to break this down properly. And to do that, I want to introduce you to a man who figured all of this out roughly 500 years ago. His name was Michel de Montaigne, French philosopher, writer, and honestly one of the most quietly radical thinkers who ever lived. This guy basically invented the idea of looking deeply inward, of questioning the rules society hands you and asking, wait, are these actually mine? His philosophy is a masterclass in inner freedom, and by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly why it's more relevant right now than it has ever been. Let's get into it. Chapter 1, The Prison of People-Pleasing. Okay, so let's talk about where most of your daily stress actually comes from. Not your job, not your finances, not even your relationships, not really. Most of your daily frustration comes from the gap between who you are and who you're performing to be for everyone around you. That gap is exhausting to maintain. And the wild thing is, most of the expectations you're killing yourself to meet, you never actually agreed to them. They were just handed to you by your family, your culture, social media, your school, and at some point you just absorbed them, and now they feel like your expectations. But they're not. They never were. Think about how much mental energy you spend on this every single day. You hesitate before posting something because you're already imagining the reaction. You over-prepare for a conversation because you need it to go exactly right. You edit yourself, your opinions, your humor, your ambitions, before other people even get a chance to respond to the real version of you. You've become your own censor. And then there's the replay loop. You know the one. You say something in a meeting, or at a dinner, or in a text message, and then for the next 3 hours you're in a courtroom in your own head prosecuting yourself. Why did I say it like that? Did they think I was being weird? Should I follow up? Should I explain myself? That's the prison Montaigne was talking about. Not bars and walls, but the constant grinding need to justify your existence to other people. And here's what really gets me about this. The people you're working so hard to impress, most of them are too busy doing the exact same thing to even notice. Everyone is starring in their own internal drama. Everyone is the main character of their own anxiety spiral, which means the audience you're performing for. Half of them aren't even watching. Montaigne put it simply, the world is never going to fully understand you. That's just a fact of being human. You could spend your entire life explaining yourself, defending your choices, softening your edges to make yourself more palatable, and at the end of it, people will still see what they want to see. So what's the point? The only approval that genuinely moves the needle in your life is your own. That's not arrogance. That's just math. You're the one living this life. You're the one who has to look back at it. Chapter 2. Redefining what not caring actually means. All right, I need to stop here because I know what some of you are thinking. Not caring? That sounds like an excuse to be lazy. That sounds like giving up. And I get it, because that's the version of not caring we've been sold. The guy who doesn't try, doesn't show up, doesn't invest in anything. That's not what this is. That's not even close. Not caring, in the Montaigne sense, is not about apathy. It's about direction. It's about consciously choosing what gets your energy and what doesn't. It's about freeing yourself from the fear of rejection, that low-level hum of anxiety that follows you around, and quietly talks you out of every bold move you're about to make, and redirecting that energy toward the things that actually matter to you. Because right now, think about how much of your effort goes toward things that don't actually matter to you specifically. The career path that looks impressive on paper. The body you're sculpting for someone else's approval. The carefully curated version of your life you're projecting online. What if you took even half of that energy and pointed it at something that lights you up from the inside? Here's the paradox that Montaigne noticed, and this one will stick with you. The less desperate you are to prove yourself, the more naturally powerful you become. There's something magnetic about a person who clearly doesn't need your validation. They're not performing. They're not trying to manage your impression of them. They're just there, fully themselves. Take it or leave it. And somehow you almost always want to take it. That's what authentic confidence actually looks like. Not bravado, not arrogance. Just someone who has genuinely stopped measuring their worth in other people's reactions. And the freedom that comes from this, I want you to really sit with this for a second, is the freedom to fail, to take the swing and miss, to try the weird idea, say the unconventional thing, start over from scratch. When you detach from the fear of judgment, you get access to a version of yourself that's been locked up for a long time. The version that creates, that risks, that lives, instead of just carefully managing how the living looks from the outside. If this is landing for you, do me a favor and drop a comment below. I genuinely want to know, what's one thing you've been holding back on because of what people might think? Chapter 3. Surrendering the illusion of control. Now let's go deeper, because this is where it gets really interesting. We've been conditioned, from the time we were kids, to believe that control equals security. Plan everything meticulously, worry hard enough, stay 5 steps ahead, and you can manage your way to a perfect outcome. If something goes wrong, it's because you didn't prepare enough, didn't think it through enough, didn't care enough, and that belief is absolutely destroying people. Because here's the truth Montaigne kept coming back to. Life is irreducibly unpredictable. Full stop. No amount of planning, no spreadsheet, no vision board, no contingency plan eliminates uncertainty. The unexpected will arrive. Things will not go according to schedule. People will surprise you, disappoint you, change direction without warning. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the system. And when we refuse to accept that, when we double down on control as a coping mechanism, we don't get safety. We get rigidity. We get anxiety. We get a life spent fighting a battle we literally cannot win. Think about the things you're trying to control right now. Other people's opinions of you, the way a situation is going to unfold, whether something you made is going to be received well, whether a relationship is going to survive. You're pouring enormous energy into managing variables that are fundamentally outside your control, and the stress that creates isn't just uncomfortable, it's pointless. It's suffering with no upside. Montaigne's invitation, and it's a gentle one, is to consider what happens when you stop. What would actually happen if you made the decision, released it, and let it go? What if you prepared as well as you could and then, and this is the radical part, trusted the outcome? I'll tell you what happens. You get lighter. Genuinely, physically lighter. That knot in your chest that you've had so long you've stopped noticing it, it starts to loosen because you're no longer spending energy fighting reality. You're moving with it instead. Mistakes stop being catastrophes and start being data. Uncertainty stops being a threat and starts being space. Space for things to unfold in ways you never could have planned. And life, weirdly, starts to feel more like something you're participating in rather than something you're constantly bracing against. Chapter 4. The Magnetic Power of Detachment. Okay, so here's where things get a little counterintuitive. And I want you to stay with me because this chapter might be the most immediately useful one. There is a strange law at work in human dynamics. Watch the person who needs the relationship too badly, who texts too much, who clings, who makes their happiness entirely conditional on someone else's response, and watch what happens. They push people away. The neediness creates pressure, and pressure repels. Now watch the person who is genuinely okay on their own, who brings warmth and engagement to their relationships but isn't dependent on them for their sense of self, who can take or leave validation without flinching either way. What happens? People are drawn to them, sometimes almost inexplicably. This is the paradox Montaigne was pointing at. The moment you stop desperately needing something, you create the conditions for it to actually arrive. And this doesn't just apply to romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, to professional respect, to creative recognition, to basically any domain where you've been white-knuckling your way toward an outcome. The root of most relationship conflict, if you strip it all the way back, is unmet expectations and the desire to control how other people show up. You need them to respond a certain way, to validate a certain version of you, to behave in ways that make you feel secure. And when they don't, because they're human beings, not props in your story, you feel betrayed, or anxious, or resentful. True connection doesn't work like that. True connection is built on acceptance, not control. On showing up fully yourself and allowing the other person to do the same, with no agenda attached to the outcome. When you genuinely make peace with who you are, when your self-worth isn't riding on external feedback, something shifts in how you move through the world. You become calmer, more present, less reactive, and other people feel that. They're drawn to it. Not because you've learned some manipulation technique, but because genuine self-acceptance is one of the rarest and most attractive qualities a human being can have. If you're getting value out of this, go ahead and hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content, and honestly, this is a conversation I think a lot of people need to have. Chapter 5. Falling into place, the art of effortless success. So we've talked about letting go of approval, letting go of control, releasing the death grip on outcomes, and I want to be really clear about something. This is not a recipe for a chaotic, directionless life. It's actually the opposite. When you stop pouring your energy into managing appearances and fighting uncertainty, you free up an enormous amount of bandwidth. And that bandwidth gets redirected, naturally, almost automatically, toward the things that genuinely matter to you, your actual values, your real work, your authentic connections, the life you'd be living if you weren't so busy performing one. And that's when things start falling into place. Think about the artist who creates their most extraordinary work not when they're anxiously chasing critical approval, but when they finally stop caring whether anyone likes it and just make the thing they needed to make. Suddenly, it's the most honest work of their career, and paradoxically, it's the work that resonates the most deeply with people. Think about the entrepreneur who changes an entire industry not because they had a perfect risk-free plan, but because they were willing to look ridiculous, fail publicly, iterate in the open, because they'd made peace with the possibility of failure and, therefore, weren't paralyzed by it. Think about the person who spends years desperately searching for love. Every date a high-stakes audition, every relationship weighted down by need, and then something shifts. They stop searching, they start actually living. They get interested in their own life, and almost immediately, the right person shows up. None of these are coincidences. They're all the same principle, playing out in different domains. When you stop suffocating life with your grip on it, life starts moving. Montaigne's deepest insight, the one that ties everything in this video together, is that wisdom is not about conquering life. It's not about overpowering uncertainty or outsmarting unpredictability or bending reality to your will. It's about learning to dance with it, to move in response to what's actually happening rather than what you're desperately trying to force into existence. And dancing feels completely different from fighting. Fighting is exhausting. Dancing, even when you're not sure of the steps, feels like freedom. So here's where I'm going to leave you. I want you to ask yourself one honest question before you close this video. What unnecessary weight are you still carrying? What expectation that was never yours to begin with are you still killing yourself to meet? What outcome are you white-knuckling when you could just let it go? What version of yourself have you been hiding because you're not sure it'll be accepted? Because here's the thing. The moment you stop caring about the wrong things, the approval, the control, the performance, the right things start finding their way to you. Not because you stopped trying, but because you stopped blocking them. That's the gift Montaigne was pointing toward 500 years ago. And it's available to you right now, today, in this exact life you're already living. If this video hit different for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you want more content that goes this deep. There's a lot more where this came from, and I promise it's worth sticking around for. I'll see you in the next one.